Perfect. Okay. So I've talked a little bit in the past, but I've stayed pretty quiet most of the time. But for those of you who don't know, I think probably everyone does who's listening live, but I've been studying at the Florence Academy of Art in Italy this past year, and I'll continue to for the next couple of years. And so I kind of wanted to talk about what my artistic process and experience in Florence has been and where I'm going with that, and kind of the underlying, I guess, kind of ideas and thoughts that are kind of behind what I'm doing. And so one thing that, or a quote that I felt like encompassed everything I wanted to talk about was actually said by the founder of the Florence Academy. Back in the beginning of the year, we all got to take a trip to his studio space in Florence to kind of get to know him a little bit better and for him to get to know us. And so this was something that he said to the small group of people when we were over there. And that was, to be a good painter, you have to be a good person. I think that's a quote that the more you dive into it, the deeper it gets. And I haven't really been able to find a bottom to that. It's much like a arch where by themselves they're two structurally really weak sides of an arch, but you put these two slants together and it creates a tremendous amount of strength that you can build on top of and build with. I wanted to talk about how I am working on trying to put these two aspects together to be able to build off of into the future. And so the first thing that you got to kind of think about is what it means to be a good person, or at least how I think of it as being a good person. Good's kind of a vague term. What I wanted to look at was more of not the moralistic view of it, but the application of the utility of something. And so what makes a good hammer, what makes a good shovel? And this was a thought that I would say originally dates back to Aristotle, what it means to be a good person. He had this interesting idea where if you put compared everything together, the thing that was unique about a specific item or specific creature, a species or an animal, was what its utility was. And so what humans had that nothing else that we know of had is our unquenchable desire to explore the unknown. In essence, he believed that was kind of the purpose or the utility of humans, something that we had that made us unique from everything else. This is a quote from Leonardo da Vinci, and this statue is also kind of by where the other picture was taken, by the Uffizi Gallery in Florence. Leonardo kind of thought in the same way, where when the spirit does not work with the hand, there is no art. So there's kind of this dichotomy between the two where they're quite closely interconnected. What that looks like, from what I understand in biology, you can't have just exploring the unknown or just venturing into the unknown without having some form of known or structure to stand upon. I think a really interesting real-world example of that is when we're reading something. We have something that we're reading and every word is foreign to us and we don't know what it means. There's no way to get meaning from that. It's only when we have the context around an isolated word or an isolated phrase or a couple of words that we're able to kind of figure out what that word could mean and build into our vocabulary. But when there's all unknown words, foreign language with no experience going into it, it's impossible to start accumulating things from that. In biology, we see that with babies and children and the dichotomy between children and their parents, where we come into this world and we're 100% reliant on our parents for everything. And as we get older and older, we start going through these different stages where this ability to start venturing into the unknown on our own, and finally where we become independent and have our own structure of known that we're able to venture out on our own. I see this identically to what I am trying to get out of art, where as a child, and the academy being the parents, where they're teaching the skills and the techniques that we're later able to start implementing on our own and finally being able to fully realize and actualize on our own. This is kind of the underlying philosophy behind an academy type school. These were three of the first pieces I did at the academy in the fall. They were replications of a drawing, 2D to 2D. So I had a large drawing setup reference next to a large paper, and using a site-size method, these drawings ranged, I think the first one of the baby took about 60 hours, and then the next one was about 80, and then the last one was like working on it 4 or 5 hours a day for like 6 weeks. It was insane. And it's quite a big drawing too, but it's kind of a rite of passage at the academy to being able to complete the Belvedere torso.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they're very time consuming. I can't look at them without having mixed emotions about them.
Yeah.
Look at somebody who had that mastery, and trying to understand and trying to glean from what they understood, and being able to see reality the way they did is a very useful skill, and it's one that a lot of academies start out with and use and constantly refer to these master studies or BARG. First figure on the left was the very first figure drawing I did. It was a 2-hour study on the very first day of school with no instruction whatsoever. So this is going into it with the skills I had going into the academy. And then these last 3 pictures were toward the end before I left back in early March. And these were somewhere in the mid-50s for the amount of these short poses that I've been doing. So this was after countless hours of work. And so you can see I feel like there's a huge progression, and that's only not quite 2 trimesters. And I'm going to be there for another 2 years and another trimester or so. It has to do a lot with repetition and just, I guess, kind of ingraining that into you to be able to start developing those skills, to be able to be competent in seeing the world and being able to translate that two-dimensionally. And so this is what my schedule looked like when I was there. I lived about half an hour away from the academy from a bike ride. And so I would ride my bike every day and get there about 8 o'clock. And then the first classes started at 9 a.m. and went to 12 p.m. And then we had another section of drawings from 1 to 4, but a lot of people you would need to set up before and clean up afterwards. And then we had another session that varied throughout the week from 5 to 7. We had 3 hours of the day, and the second 3 hours of the day were the same every day, 5 days a week. And that last 2 hours from 5 to 7 was the thing that varied. And then on top of that, we had a lot of anatomy homework, extra studio time, people working and doing a variety of other things. So it was quite a intense program where they're really trying to get you disciplined, I guess, so that when you do go out from the academy into the real world, you have that discipline, or the idea is that you have that discipline to put in those hours and focus that it takes to do this type of art. I think of this a lot as being a child on the being a good person aspect of the quote, and being a good artist. It's almost like, I guess, your parents telling you to clean your room or brush your teeth or good hygiene or all these different things, where they're just kind of trying to get that discipline into you from an early age. In addition to being a good person and being a good artist, that kind of concept and idea, I also think of it as in terms of a good drawing. More specifically, the way that we are learning how to do the drawings at the academy is by starting with a truth, and that one truth is the plumb line, and so that is the line that you see going down the page. And there's also a string going down on the actual cast, the 3-dimensional cast, and that's our truth because it's perfectly parallel, and everything else is built off of that. And so that's kind of our known structure, and then everything else is the unknown that we're building onto it. And then once we get that kind of figured out, we have more of that known area, and we're able to kind of venture out into more unknown and finally get the drawing blocked in and start working through the stages of the drawing. And so this was my second cast I was working on at the academy. I didn't quite get to finish it, but as far as my understanding, it's still set up. So I'm skeptical that it's going to be all intact still when I come back in the fall, but I have my fingers crossed that I won't have to start completely over on this one. Some of the stuff I've been working on post academy back in Salem. And so I've been doing a lot of master studies, trying to stay in that fundamental and really get into trying to understand what the artist was seeing and what the artist was kind of transcribing from nature and how to best do that. I also did a self-portrait, which I used a mirror to do that. And so I've been just focusing on drawing a lot. But I'm hoping to start getting into some limited palette stuff of starting to work with cools and warms and start going to that. But my main focus for the summer is to really dive into drawing a lot more. Where I am in Salem, my family, we have a kind of a shed that is normally just kind of extra room where we just kind of throw stuff that we aren't currently using. And when I came back, I kind of converted that, a little section of that shop into a studio space. And so I was able to pick up some painter's canvas and staple it on the walls and kind of isolate an area off. There was like a little top storage place, and I found really, really cheap carpet, and I put it up there, and I threw up some chairs, and I had a fun time kind of setting up a studio space. So all these images were done in the studio space.
Ah.
I do enjoy teaching. I've done a little bit in the past, but I don't want that to be my main focus, or at least as of now. I mean, I'm still pretty rough and young, so I don't want to narrow myself down to any specific area too soon. But I definitely see myself being more of like an entrepreneurial artist, finding creative ways to bring in some money from a variety of different incomes. I definitely want to be long-term, not entirely commission-based, but kind of creating my own brand and my own voice in the art world. But I definitely see that there's a lot of different avenues for artists, and I'm not boggled down in one specific area yet.
Yeah, it seems like even for the last, I don't know, 8 years basically or so, you've probably, or I don't know exactly how many, but you've been out selling making art and selling art, whether art fairs, different venues for quite a while. So it's not something that's new to you at all. It seems like it's already been part of your life.
Yeah, because I was one of the emerging artists for last year's Salem Art Fair. And then when I just turned 15, so I was a freshman in high school, I had a booth at Rose City Comic Con where I did a bunch of like fan art, colored pencil, realistic drawing type stuff. Yeah, that was a really successful and fun event. It was kind of my first time selling stuff on a larger scale, but the setup room for that, you had to be 16 or older, so I had to get like a special permit because I was only 15 at the time. Yeah, so I really enjoy that business aspect of art.